Alright, quick reminder that this is still going on until January 31st. Every 1k subs from now until then, I will add one Dazzler Pass to a February giveaway. And we have a Dazzler Pass giveaway starting January 1st because y'all are crazy and the best community at the same time. But yeah, now we have, today we're doing something a bit different. We are doing a Sig Stone guide. And I'm not really the type of person that makes guides too often, but you know, hitting 15k subs, having like the biggest momentum shift on my channel probably ever, I think it's time I like do some, you know, more helpful videos as well, because I think that's important to have on a channel for sure. So I want to start with a Sig Stone guide because I feel like everyone has a massive amount of these things with the Carina's challenges, with the banquet event, and we're just all like trying to scramble to use these stones before they expire, right? So in this video I have three sections. I have competitive offense, competitive defense, and alliance war / PvE, and you'll understand why those two are like combined in just a second when we get to it. But I also have two categories in those sections. I have 4 regular recommended options, but then I have 4 of my choice. And those are just very solid options, but also some hear me out options. And you'll see in just a second what I'm talking about. But yeah, let's get started with the competitive defense section. So I have 4 champions here, and I'm gonna like just leave this graphic for the duration of this, and I'm just gonna let my words do the talking, right? So for defense, we have 4 options here. These aren't ranked from like best to worst, but then again, if you made the list, you are obviously like one of the best options. This is just like, if I am thinking competitive defense, I think of these 4 champions first. We'll start off with one of the newest additions, which is buffed Mr. Sinister. This champion is making waves in the battle realm. He is like quite possibly the second best mutant champion in the game overall. He is something that is honestly like just crazy strong, right? And it's because of his value on both offense and defense. Now for defense, I think it is important to have him awakened and like at a pretty high sig, because that just makes him so much more annoying than he usually is unawakened. Now what his awakened ability does is he gains access to these genetic passives, and at the start of the fight he gains 3 of them, right? And investing Sig Stones into him increases the potency of those genetic effects. So for example, the Mystic genetic effect goes from a 5% power rate increase to a 20% power rate increase, and that is big. That is a lot of extra power rate. Think about like drawing that 3 times in a fight, right? You go from 15% at Sig 1 to 60% at Max Sig, and Mr. Sinister has one of the most annoying special attacks in the game, because if he drops it twice in a row, the SP1 that is, you will get degened for a lot of damage. So that's when you like really want to have him max sig, because it will make him a lot more annoying to deal with, and it's also very good for attack, which we'll get to in just a second. So yeah, he is a great sig investment for defense, and spoiler alert, he's on the offense list too. But now we have Domino, and Domino is a champion that is like old but gold, right? But it's not like a type of gold that you like. It's honestly just not very enjoyable. I do not like this champion, and it's because of her awakened ability. So this champion is pretty old, so you might know what the awakened ability is, but if you don't worry, I'll tell you. It's called critical failure, and what it does is whenever an ability fails to trigger, and you know, it can just like be any ability in the game, Domino does a certain amount of energy damage to you, and at max sig, it is a lot of energy damage. It is a lot of damage, and you know, at sig 1 you won't really notice it, it'll just tickle. At sig 200 you're like, okay, I have to have a counter for this champion. Having a sig 200 Domino forces the opponent to find a counter and scramble for a counter, and you can like literally base a whole deck around Domino and like base your bans around it as well, because she is just that impactful. And if you don't have a counter to Domino and she's Sig 200, you probably just like lose the round, right? So yeah, it's important to have her and have her like close to max Sig. So if you need a Sig stone investment, she is definitely a very good option. So is Photon. Photon is an incredible champion, great dual purpose character for sure, but on the defensive side, a max Sig Photon is absolutely disgusting. So what her awakened ability does is it gives her increased block penetration for like each debuff on the opponent. So once you hit her, and by the way, another part of the awakened ability is whenever you strike Photon, she has up to a 60% chance at max Sig to inflict one debuff on you. It's one of her energy vulnerability debuffs. So yeah, you pair that with her block penetration per debuff, and Sig 1, like Sig 20 Photon, not bad. Sig 200, when those two abilities are at the maximum level, it is a nightmare, man. If you don't have the right counter, like a Mantis or something, you will be taking so much block damage. You will be taking just like so much damage in general, and she becomes 1,000 times worse without a counter, and she becomes a massive defensive threat. So yeah, you want to have counters to Photon, but not only that, if you want to make people's days worse, you want a max Sig Photon. It is just crucial to have to make her viable on defense. But now we have the main character of this section, at least. Now I said that I didn't rank these, but Serpent, if I did have to rank him, he'd be number 1. If you are pushing for a competitive defense roster, this isn't a Sig stone that you have in your account. It is a Serpent stone, because he is by far the best investment for you. He is a genuinely crazy strong defender, and that awakened ability just helps him even further. So what his awakened ability is whenever he drops down to 1 health or he's about to be knocked out, he gains this immortality. Now when he has this immortality active, he of course cannot be knocked out, and he also gains a rapid amount of power and health over a certain amount of time. The Sig stone investment increases the uptime of that immortality, and if you have a max Sig one, it is a lot of health and power gain, and that immortality is also just very long, so it's hard to stop it without him getting to 3 bars of power and just doing some extra damage to you. So it is really, really worth investing into for defense, because the uptime on the immortality can honestly make or break a fight for so many different champions. Like a Sig 1 Serpent, he does have access to it, but it's just so it's just so not noticeable, right? But with a max Sig one, you have to play around it. You have to have a counter to him, or else you are just done for. So yeah, max Sig Serpent, cheat code for competitive defense. If you're a free-to-play player and you have only 200 stones to use, and that's it, you can only take up 1 champion to max Sig, this should be your pick, because you can build an entire Battlegrounds deck around him. He will get banned if you try to do that, obviously, but then again, that just means that the opponent only has 2 bans to play with, because this guy is just gone, right? So yeah, it is massive to have a max Sig, and he is one of the best investments, not just for defense, but just overall. So yeah, Serpent, he takes the cake for this one. Now we have my choice. Now this is gonna be secondary options, or also just top options, but also somewhere you have to hear me out. So for the ones that are obvious, I think that Atuma is a great max Sig investment. Now what he does is, whenever he is about to start a fight, he has a chance to gain a concussion at the start of the fight, and this one is permanent until he gains other concussions. Now this can be up to 2 concussions, actually up to 3, but realistically a max Sig Atuma will start with 2 concussions, and that is very good because those concussions increase his chance to do Thorns damage to the opponent, which is really helpful for Battlegrounds defense. So you want to have a max Sig Atuma, or like very close to max Sig. So if you're a person that can invest like fully into a champion, a Sig 100 to 150 Atuma is very, very good to like invest into, because it doesn't require 200 Sig stones, but you still get some good value out of like 80 to 100. And the next one is Korg. And Korg is a very, very solid attacker. Not attacker, he's a good defender. He's a really bad attacker, right? I think he's still good on defense even like in 2024 because he's just a great time stall. However, if you invest into a max Sig Korg, he will just skyrocket in value, in my opinion. Of course he has hard counters, but every champion in this game has a hard counter, right? And Korg is one of those characters where without a counter, he is very, very annoying to fight, especially at max Sig. So what max Sig does is it increases his Thorns damage up to like absurd numbers, where if you do a medium attack and you know the Thorn shield is up, you will like probably lose the Battlegrounds match, to be honest, because it's just that impactful. Additionally, it also skyrockets his purify chance, so he will be like purifying those stuns so often, and like those other debuffs as well. So yeah, a max Sig Korg is just a purify and Thorns damage machine, and he is well worth the investment if you're looking for just like a solid all-around defender that I think is good in pretty much every meta, to be honest. Alright, now we got Thing. Thing is pretty straightforward. Whenever you awaken him and max Sig him, he gets a very strong protection. This protection can have up to like 100% potency, or like 95%. It's something very silly. And yeah, he is a very, very good defender for that reason. Like I said before, of course he has counters. Every champion in this game has a pretty much dedicated counter. And yeah, Thing without a counter though is one of the most frustrating fights in the game to this day, because he is just so tanky. He takes like no damage while protection is up, and if you try to do too much damage to him, he will trigger that protection that pretty much stops all damage. So yeah, very, very annoying to deal with, a very good defender to this day. And yeah, if you need a time stall and you just like want someone that can really get you those victories via fight time, I think Thing is still a very good investment. Now we have the one that's like, okay, hear me out, but we have Havoc. Now, look, this one's an interesting one, right? Obviously, it's a bit of an oddball pick. However, just like think about it. So, Havoc's awakened ability is whenever he gains a plasma charge, or like he inflicts a plasma debuff, he has an up to 55% chance to gain an additional buff, or like debuff, like, sorry, not buff, like plasma charge or a plasma debuff. Now, here's why that's so good, right? Let's say you're fighting a Havoc in Battlegrounds and he drops the SP1 because he just like did it into your block. It happens very, very often, right? He will gain about like what, 8 or something charges, and like that's pretty annoying to deal with, right? Imagine if he was max Sig and like those 8 charges, or like those 10 charges even, turn into like 15, into like 17 if you're unlucky, which like if you're fighting a Havoc, I feel like that 55% chance turns into like 80% chance, right? So those extra plasmas can lead to a pretty big detonation, and if not that, then that's still like 5 or 6 debuffs, and pair that with Inequity and he is taking a lot less damage because of that mastery. Now additionally, a unawakened Havoc is very easy to counter with anyone, because you know that he's just going to gain 1 plasma charge, and it's very easy to just like bail out the heavy attack and deal with that 1 charge. However, with an awakened and max Sig Havoc, that's not really guaranteed anymore, because one of those charges can just turn to 2 instantly, and it's like, oh, so I'm running out of heavy attack, like heavy attack baiting, and like if you don't have the ideal counter, like you know, a tech champion that doesn't crit, and like you have to crit him with a separate character. You're like, oh, I keep on critting him, he keeps on gaining double charges, now he's up to like 10 of his plasma charges, and now every single time I hit him I am getting these, like, you know, these 5 plasma debuffs on myself, and it can just spiral out of control really quickly if he's max sig. If he's unawakened, it's very, very easy to counter a Havoc, and like that max sig is just really important to making him a problem defender in 2024. Of course he has his counters, right? Like you know, every champion in this game has counters, but Havoc is a type of character where if you fully invest into him, he will be a problem defender for a lot of meta champions that don't really think about countering him at first. So yeah, a max sig Havoc that just like gains double plasma charges like crazy, he's a problem for sure. I would definitely ban that, because yeah, like that 55% chance, that's a massive chance to just like keep on gaining double plasma. And like if he drops that SP1 at max sig, you just like, you forfeit, right? Because you're just gonna get detonated like so many times. So yeah, very, very interesting pick on my end, and I had to defend it for like what, 3 minutes, but you know, maybe like consider it at least. I don't know, I think it has potential at the minimum. But now we have competitive offense, and we got some interesting champions here. So I'll talk about Mr. Sinister first, since like he's already been brought up in this video. So Mr. Sinister, his awakened ability has both offensive and defensive uses. The offensive use is the fact that he actually does gain some other genetic like codes for specific classes that are very attack based. For example, the cosmic one is the one that people will always talk about because it is just straight up an attack rating increase. Now for competitive battlegrounds and like, you know, other competitive pieces of content, timing, like time is everything, right? It's very important, especially for a champion like Mr. Sinister, who will pretty much guaranteed finish with the full yellow bar. So like his fights will come down to fight time for sure. And having like that extra attack rating increase from the cosmic like genetic code, that's very, very important. And like at max sig, it is a very massive attack rating increase, so I think it is important to have him maxed out just for like defensive use, but also attack use as well, because like having that cosmic genetic code can just be like very helpful. And like of course it's a percent chance that you get it, right? So it's not even guaranteed, but even having that like chance to get that very, very strong genetic code, I think it's worth like investing into Mr. Sinister, because even if like nothing else, it's still very good for defense. So like you just get 2 birds with 1 stone with his awakened ability. Now we have Black Panther Civil War. I could have put this in my choice in like, you know, my picks, but I think this guy is gonna like break Battlegrounds, to be honest, especially a max sig one. So what his awakened ability does is he gets to start the fight in his reflective matrix, and he also starts with a certain amount of charges per sig. I think max sig is like 20 charges. 20 charges for Black Panther is massive, because once you're like at the SP2, that SP2 with the bonus charges from the awakened ability will one-shot essentially any Battlegrounds health pool. So yeah, it's important to have him like very high sig if you want to be like, you know, if you want to be like as safe as possible, you want to be as like sure as possible that he will one-shot any defender, you want him max sig, like just sig 200. It has to be that essentially. So yeah, it's really good to have him at max sig. It's good to have him just like regardless. He's a very good attacker even unawakened, but if you want to be competitive, if you want to push for like the top, or like just push for a high ranking in Battlegrounds, there will be some cases where like you will lose because your Black Panther couldn't one shot since he was like unawakened. But having those extra sigs invested, he will one shot like any Battlegrounds health pool. And a nice little bonus for y'all is that he actually is a glorious guardian, so those 70 sigs we got from the banquet event does apply to him, so that's a nice little head start to max sigging him. Now we have Onslaught. Now this is kind of a hear me out one to be honest, but just hear me out. Onslaught is going to be your most used champion if you have him, right? Like that's just like fact of the matter. He is going to be your most used Battlegrounds attacker, Battlegrounds defender. He is going to be used for everything, right? Why not Max Sig your most used champion? That's my thought process. And here's my other thought process. Sometimes, actually a lot of the times, right? Because he is in every single Battlegrounds deck, you will be going head to head with like an Onslaught, right? Max Sig 1 wins. Because Max Sig 1 has that 33% Daunted potency increase. If you're wondering what the Awakened ability is, that's it. A 33% increase to his Daunted. That's massive. That is 33% to an already very strong attacker. So he will win you matches because of that extra Daunted potency, right? And like I said, this is competitive offense. This is like trying to get to the top. You will have to have a fully invested Onslaught to beat the other Onslaughts, because this guy is everywhere, right? And a lot of people already have a Max Sig Onslaught for prestige. So if you want to keep up with that, you have to Max Sig him, and he's going to be worth it, because 33%, that is very noticeable on a very strong champion. So yeah, honestly, I thought I'd have to like do a hear me out, but no, this actually does just make sense, right? He is your most used champion. Max Sig him because of it. And like get some wins, because you have a Max Sig Onslaught and it beats an unduped one like 33% faster. So yeah, very important to Max Sig your Onslaught if he is your guy, right? If he's not your champ, if he's not your guy, you can like have him unduped for like defense, but that extra step with the Sig 200 will honestly be very noticeable, and it can also even change his rotation sometimes if you get a lucky start with the Neuroshocks. Now, last but not least, we have Prowler. Prowler's the type of character that, like, it's Sig 200 or nothing. So if you wanted to start on, like, an investment, start with Prowler, because you have to have him Sig 200. He scales in a way that is very bad. He scales like OG Thor, where Sig 20 or, like, Sig 2 to like 180 do like close to nothing, and Sig 181 to 200 do the most. It's bad. It's not healthy for the game. It shouldn't exist anymore, and it's annoying because it like forces you to focus on Prowler if you want to use this champion, which is like fine, right? He's a good champion to invest in. He's a very versatile character. He can take fights that not many others can take, like combined. For example, he does Domino and Korg and Atuma and Electro. He's also good for like other mutant characters like Dust. Like he's a great mutant and skill counter, funny enough, which is, you know, pretty cool. But yeah, it starts with Max Sigging him, in my opinion, because, you know, y'all might hate me like saying this like so many times, but in competitive Battlegrounds, fight time matters, and you will lose if you have an undue Prowler that just doesn't crit, and you go against a Max Sig one that has a much higher crit chance. So what his Awakened ability does, it pretty much increases his crit rate while the opponent is faltered, and that is absolutely massive for him, because he really wants to crit on the SP2 to one-shot most health pools. Maybe not one-shot, but get very close to it. And the comparison between an unduped and a Max Sig Prowler, like one that just doesn't crit too often versus one that crits very often, it's like night and day. You have to have a Max Sig, man. It is such a massive difference. He's still a good champion without it, but he's good without it in just like general stuff. In like Battlegrounds where the fight time matters, where you want to have the best version of a character, Max Sig has to happen, or else you will not win head-to-head Prowler matchups, right? So yeah, Max Sig Prowler, very important, very strong champion, one of the best attackers in the game, to be honest, and it starts with that Max Sig. Now it's time for my choice, and I have some, honestly, I think they're all just like good options. So yeah, we'll start with the most boring, which is probably Guardian. Guardian, he's just like a good all-around investment in like Battlegrounds. you will notice the max sig difference versus Domino, especially. I guess only versus Domino, because I feel like she's the only champion that has like very noticeable energy damage. So yeah, Guardian's Awakened ability gives him extra block efficiency, extra armor rating, extra crit res, and extra energy res. The energy res is the most important part. It makes him very good for Domino, like extra good that is. So yeah, if you want a very strong Domino counter, Max Sig Guardian is very, very good to have. And he is a champion that like you don't have to Max Sig, but it just makes him a bit cooler, right? Just makes him cooler for like Domino. But yeah, Guardian, very good all-around champion, can take a ton of fights, and I feel like he's officially back because he's gonna work for 2 Battlegrounds metas in a row. So yeah, very good champion, very, very good to have at Max Sig just because it makes him tankier and safer to play. Now we have Spiral. Spiral is like my actual pick. Like, this is the pick that I completely stand by. I love Spiral, man. She's such a good champion. However, I do kind of think that I put her in the wrong spot. I think she should be in like the PvE because Spiral's Awakened ability isn't the most helpful for Battlegrounds and like competitive stuff, but I don't care. I had to put her somewhere, you know, so this is where I'm going to put her. What her Awakened ability does is it gives her minus 10% duration on Poison, Shock, and Incinerate debuffs or effects. I'm pretty sure it's debuffs, but yeah, minus 10% duration for each fervor on her. She stacks up to 15, so it can be up to a minus 150% duration, which means she just counters those debuffs completely. Very, very good to have. Is it good for competitive stuff? Like Alliance War, to be honest, yes, very good for Alliance War, right? I've talked mainly about Battlegrounds, but I saved Alliance War for a separate section, but technically this is also competitive, so yeah, I mean, it's good to have for sure. Her other stuff in like the Awakened ability is just okay, but the main thing is that very, very helpful and handy like reduction to those debuffs. But also her other part of the Awakened ability lets her regen like 60% of damage taken while she has Dancing Blades active, from blocked hits that is, so that does make her an even better Serpent option. And yeah, that block regen might win you some matchups. So there we go, there's my copium. That's why it should belong in this category. But yeah, now we have Crossbones here. Crossbones is a very interesting one as well. You could argue that it is for like Alliance War 2, but I think there are a lot of reasons why it's good for Battlegrounds as well. There are a lot of champions that inflict debuffs onto you, right? Like you have Photon, you have Void, you have even like I-Bomb, but you don't really see him these days. But yeah, a lot of champions that inflict debuffs onto you that Crossbones can just purify and get a massive head start to his damage output, right? I think the most important thing is the Photon matchup because yeah, like you can just go in, do a couple of hits, purify the debuffs, and then you have like 4 Furies to start the fight, enter Overrun, one-shotter with the SP2, massive damage output, and like a massive head start to an already good matchup. And like that extra fight time can win you so many matchups, man. Like it can be so helpful to just securing that victory versus Photon and versus other prominent science defenders as well, like Spider-Ham for example with the SP1 ton, Void with the Intimidating Presence debuffs. It's a very good ability versus those science characters. And like even like other champions have debuffs, like, you know, if you're a Madman and want to do this matchup, then having that Purify can make him pretty good for Serpent, since you purify the Fear debuff and get a nice head start to your damage output that way too. So like yeah, it has uses all around like Battlegrounds. If there's a debuff meta, he will be a top option for it with his Purify. He is just a really strong investment for sure. Now we have the one that, no, this isn't even hear me out. Shocker's just crazy strong, man. Like MSD's proven it like a lot of times. Shocker's just really good, right? And this is another case where it's like undupe Shocker works fine, but if you want to be competitive and you want to win matchups with Shocker, you want him max sig because it refunds up to 100% of the power cost of the SP1. That is insane, right? You could build up to like 1.9 bars of power, drop the SP1, it's refunded, drop the SP2 like 2 hits afterwards, one shot an onslaught, win the round because you just did it that fast, because that awaken ability is that good. That's insane, man. Like, having access to that, to a free special attack 1, I don't know how that was even like allowed, but he is that good. He will win you matchups because he is just that fast with that extra SP1, with that free SP1 essentially. And it all starts with the max Sig. So yeah, Shocker, very good for Onslaught, for Dust, for so many different mutant champions, and for like other general characters too. He's good for Korg, he can even do like Photon for example, and it all starts with that max Sig that just gives him that insane ceiling that can just let him ramp up so quickly and finish fights just comically fast, man. So yeah, Shocker, very strong champion, very worth max Sig, and he will be such a good dual threat as well because I hate fighting him so much, and I can rant about that for 30 minutes, but I won't. So let's just move on before I get too angry, but I feel like it's too late. Now we got Alliance War in PvE, and yes, I know that some of these champions are also very good for Battlegrounds. Ultron, very good for Battlegrounds. Null, very good for Battlegrounds. Captain America, one of the strongest Battlegrounds characters when it comes to pure attack. However, these signature abilities are very good for Alliance War or PvE/long content. Looking at you, Null. So let's start with Ultron. Ultron's a very strong attacker that can do fights very quickly in Battlegrounds with his raw damage output. However, once you invest into his Awaken ability, he's even better for those Alliance War / just like general nodes. Whenever you invest into him, he can reduce shock and incinerate duration by up to 85%, and he also regens a certain percentage of energy damage from energy contact hits. He is very strong against those hazard shift nodes because he is at base, bleed, and poison immune. So max digging him will make him very, very strong for both paths in hazard shift and Alliance War. He will also be good for like the mini boss Alliance War nodes where like hazard shift is like, you know, those really weird combos of like incinerate and shock for example. So yeah, unlocking his potential in like PvE starts with like max digging him because it enables him to take so many more fights. And I know that Spiral should have been here, like I'll admit it, she should be here, but I just had to put her somewhere, man, and I gave Ultron this slot instead. Now we have Null. Now this champion is very strong, right? His Awaken ability lets him start the fight with up to 15 Living Abyss charges. You pair this with the Power Start 1 in Alliance War, and he has like one of the craziest fight times for like any Alliance War attacker, right? Very good for that piece of content. 15 charges in like Labyrinth, or like not Labyrinth, but like Necropolis, can make or break a solo that he has in that piece of content, right? Having a max Sig is very important because it just gives him one of the strongest head starts in the game. Like 15 charges is really, really good for Null, right? That's like a very, very good head start that will, like I said, make or break some fights in Alliance War for him, and it makes him very, very strong in that piece of content. He's good for so many different evade matchups in Alliance War. He's so good for like any tactic matchup that he's like, you know, tactic for, which he currently is. So yeah, Null's just a really strong character to counter tech champions as well because of his armor removal. He's just good, man. He's just a really good champion, and he is worth investing the Sigs into for sure. Didn't get to talk too much about him, but that's really just it. He's just a strong character. And now we have two science gods that are old but gold. First is Captain America Infinity War. Now, what this champion does whenever he is awakened is he gains various benefits depending on the class of the champions that are on his team. So Mystic and Mutant, very skippable. Just like, let's not even talk about them, right? Now we're getting to like the decent stuff. Science is a weakness debuff whenever he parries, which is decent for like adding to, Despair, for example. Tech is a Petrify of 25% potency, which paired with Despair is like very, very strong. That's good for reversing regen, for reversing power gain even. It is a very good thing to have for Captain America. Now the Cosmic one is an armor break, which is very good for countering tech champions. It makes him one of the best tech countering characters in the game, for like older tech champions at least. And that's crazy because he's a science champion, right? But yeah, Cosmic is a very good like team slot to have with him, especially because Cosmic characters are broken. You have Hercules, you have Hulkling that you can just like put on the team to make Cap stronger. That's the craziest part about Captain America, is like it's not specific champions, it's just a class. You can have a team of Captain America plus like the strongest cosmic character, Hercules. I mean, that's like, up for debate, but let's just say Hercules, right? You can put like the strongest tech champion, which can be like oh man, I do not want to ruffle feathers right now, but who's the strongest tech still in my eyes? I got no clue. But you can have a very strong tech champion. Let's just say Warlock, for example. I love that guy. You can have the strongest skill champion. What's the skill ability? Every time Captain America is inflicted with a debuff, he has a 100% chance to purify it. That is insane. Any debuff in the game, he can consume a kinetic potential to purify it. That is one of the strongest abilities in this game, and I'm not even joking. That is insane. And you can put someone like Nick Fury, like Kate Bishop on the team with you, and unlock that absurd ability. At max Sig, at Sig 200, all of these things are guaranteed. Anything lower and it's a gamble every single time. Max Sig or bust for this champion, and that's just the truth, but it's so worth doing if you care about Alliance War, where he can take Hazard Shift with that skill ability, where he can take any cosmics, or like any tech character, with the cosmic ability. He can reverse any power gain or regen with the science, no, not the science, the tech ability. I'm sorry, it confuses me. Like, you'll get used to it once you play him, but like just thinking about it right now, man, it's a lot to remember. But yeah, he's just very good, right? He's a very good champion for PvE, for Alliance War, and you want to have a max Sig to guarantee his value. Last but not least is the Void. Void is a very good champion, right? It all starts with how much you want to invest in this champion. If he's Sig 1, he still has access to Fear of the Void. Very helpful. Anything past that makes him more and more playable. And I'm not even kidding, because Void at like Sig 1 just has negative damage output. Void at Sig 100 has decent damage output. Void at Sig 200 has practical damage output. Pretty much how it is, right? What you do when you invest into Void Sigs is not only give him increased attack rating whenever Fear of the Void is up, but you also give him a faster debuff application whenever Fear of the Void is up. So you're not only investing in some more pure attack rating, you're investing into faster debuff application, which does lead to more damage via intimidating presence. Void is very good for any regen, for any power gain, for just like general fights where like you want to just have a source of DOT at all times, and like his DOT no one's immune to, so yeah, he's very strong in Alliance War and just general questing as well. And at max Sig, he becomes a very, very strong champion, for sure. Now we have my choice, and some of these are like understandable. One of them is like, okay, I can very much tell you put like some personal bias into this. The other one is like, okay, this is pure bias. I don't care, right? Who do we start with? We're gonna start with Omega Red, since he's the pretty like simple one. Investing into Omega Red increases his damage output. It gives him more damage while you have 10 spores, and that's very, very good for just increasing his general damage. He's very good for Alliance War, does fights really quickly, and if you have like the recoil masteries, he does any piece of content very, very quickly, assuming that they are in his health range, right? Alliance War is that health range. Some questing fights are as well. Very good, very worth investing into if you like the recoil masteries and you just want like a very fast champion for those fights that he's good for, which is like any purify, and to be honest, just like anything. He can just kind of take anything at max sig because he just has that much damage output in such little time. Next we have Angela. Now Angela's a very interesting champion. I feel like she does have value to this day, and while people feel like she is losing value, I don't really think she is. I think she still is very good. Like, she still does like really crazy things. Her awakened ability gives her access to nullify resistance per buff on her. Also gives her access to auto block reduction per buff on her, and gives her duration reduction to any damaging debuff in the game per buff on her. At max sig, this is, I believe, 35% per buff on her. So 3 buffs and you shut off all those things. Very, very strong, right? A very solid mechanic that honestly needs more appreciation, because it lets her take hazard shift with ease, because she can take any of them, since like her DOT thing is for any DOT debuff in the game. So yeah, both hazard shift lanes she can take, unless there are some outside factors that prohibit that, but she will be very good for that. She can take any auto block champion with absolute ease, because like after 3 buffs she just counters it completely. So yeah, she is very, very good at max sig. Like the lower sigs are really not that good, because you really have to like force your hands. You have to like have like Odin pre-fights, some like other buffs from like other synergies to really get her going. But with max sig, you just need like her base buffs and then you're good. Like you have the reduction to everything. So yeah, max sig Angela is very, very nice to have for like Alliance War, for general questing as well. Very strong champion, insanely underrated, just like Gladiator. Gladiator's a champion that max sig can be really, really helpful for certain matchups, because it lets him start the fight with a vigilance, which means he immediately counters miss, right? But also, whenever he is awakened, he reduces the ability accuracy of armor ups by 100%. Very, very good ability, right? That's his Sig 1 ability, getting that armor up reduction. However, any Sig stone invested increases the duration of the vigilance, and it can increase a lot. Like a lot, right? And it will make or break him, because if you want to use him for path 3 in Alliance War, you have to have him very high Sig. Because if he's not high sig, he will run out of vigilance uptime and he will just get clapped. If he's max sig, you will have a very fun time with him in that piece of content. Max sig is really important for him in that scenario, and it's very important in like miss fights as well. And he is a very, very strong champion. He has access to a lot of DOT, he has access to vigilance, to the armor up thing, he has that damage on the special attacks, which is really crazy sometimes. He is just a very good all-around character, and increasing that utility and overall usefulness starts with the max sig. Now we have the final champion in this video. Very biased, but I love Namor. He's a very fun champion to play. Water animations, top tier, absolutely. We need more water characters. Let's get work into the game ASAP, please. But yeah, Namor at Sig 200, if you don't know what it does, it reflects all damage to the opponent, and yeah, that's all damage. So Dazzler, sorry, but yeah, not as cool as Namor, because he can reflect anything in the game. However, he has to have max Sig. No ifs, ands, or buts, because max Sig Namor gets that full 100% reduced damage. Sig 199, not reduced damage like all the way, right? Sig 198, not like full reduced damage. Sig 200 takes 0 damage from those abilities, from Korg's Thorns, from Atuma's Thorns, from Electro's damage, from Power Sting, from like anything that like you can think of, like Maestro's energy radiation. He will take no damage from it. It's very good. It's very powerful. It's very unbalanced, but you know, it all starts with max Sig. He's very good for specific fights, like the ones I mentioned earlier, and it all starts with that max Sig, right? If you want to play this champion, he's not for everyone. He's not for most people, to be honest, but he's still very fun. He's still very cool because of the water animations. If you want to try this champion out, it starts with max Sigging him. So yeah, I have a max Sig one. I love him to pieces. My second favorite champion, or my third favorite champion probably, somewhere up there. And yeah, I just really enjoy playing him, and it's just fun reflecting everything with him because it makes him really good for certain matchups. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this. Very fun video to make. I like making guides. I like just yapping about characters uncontrollably. So if you want to see more of that, then let me know in the comments below that like you enjoyed this type of video. I hope it helped you. Some of my takes might be a bit like out there, but it's just all in good fun. But let me know your thoughts on the Sig Stone guide, and yeah, that's about it for me.